Hello, Professor Morgan here. I am a associate professor of English, and I am also author of 12 books. I'm going to just give you some insight on this book called Story Genius by Lisa Cron. And this is a book that I've noticed has been used in some schools for almost like a textbook of sorts for in creative writing courses. And I will say that this is kind of like a review of this, of of my take on this book. So first of all, this is a overall disclaimer. I don't know, Lisa. I don't, and I don't, I don't have any particular, you know, beefs against her or anything like this, or I'm not trying to promote the book. I'm just trying to give my insight on it. I have read quite a few books on the concept of how to write a book, or basically how to do something creative. And this book tends to take some really interesting approaches and brings up a lot of excellent points and a lot of really wonderful things that I had never considered that I integrated. At the same time, um, I will openly admit I was a little distracted, I guess is a good way of saying it, in the way that some of the information was presented. And that's what I want to kind of touch on today because I also want to, even though this we're talking about creative writing, and I mean, this is talking about using brain science, so we also need to consider the concept of critical thinking. And so there was a few times when I was like, yeah, I'm not so sure, whatever. So let me give you an example. Again, a word of the wise is like whenever we, look at a process of how to do something, creative. Again, I'm a writer, so I understand the concept of writing. And people, like if someone's a florist, they've got their skill set. If someone's an artist, a painter, a sculptor, there's processes to do something creative, and we can get ideas and see how other people have done it, and whatever. And again, but we still need to think critically. Like, okay, how am I going to integrate and how this affects how I do things, and whatever. And have you ever heard the saying, "You should take this with a grain of salt"? Well, sometimes the advice that we're given is, I kind of joke that we should take it with a tablespoon of salt, because it's kind of like, well, okay, I'm going to listen to what you have to say, but no, not but. I'm going to listen to what you have to say, yet I'm going to really use my creative thinking and critical thinking and figure out, okay, what does this mean to me and how am I going to be able to apply this? Okay, so let me give you an example of, like, let's say a concern of, basically I think the overall approach, the way that Cron, uh, approaches a lot of the concepts in this book. So here's a quote. First, ditch Oxford English's definition of story as something created for entertainment. It could not be more wrong. All right. So, as a critical thinker, one of the red flags that comes whenever I read a statement is when opinions are stated as fact or when there's absolutes. Okay. Now, this is kind of, you can say this is kind of tongue in cheek. It's like, yeah, the Oxford English, the Oxford English kind of defines this word story as this. It could not be more wrong. Well, really? I mean, I think it could. It could define story as, the fuel that is used to, do an automobile, I don't know. Anyway, but also what's kind of implied here is it could not be more wrong, in my opinion, or it is so much more than that. So, but this kind of like this, it could not be more wrong. Kind of, is like, okay, so you're right, but the Oxford English folks are wrong, right? Okay, so that right away is kind of like, okay, well, okay, so now I'm a little like, okay, a little leery about what are you going to provide to me, because if you're, I mean, these are some pretty smart folks, and that's usually a kind of a group or whatever. Okay, so let's take a look at another example. Okay, um, At its most basic, a story is about how someone grapples with a problem they can't avoid and how they change in the process. Now, overall, there's a lot to be said about the insight on this. Okay, I had a creative writing teacher that said, stories are about trouble. It's just another way of saying conflict or obstacles. Okay. Um, Now, are all stories about someone? Okay. Are they really grappling with a problem? Sometimes they're not even aware that they have a problem. Maybe that's semantics. Okay. But the challenge here is a problem they can't avoid. Okay. Are there problems that we face in our lives that we can avoid? And I would say perhaps. I mean, because when we look at the different types of conflicts that can happen, I mean, yes, when you have, human versus human, sometimes one human has a different idea of doing something and someone else has a different idea. And so they have, a difference of opinion and they have a conflict. Or if you have, human versus nature, well, I mean, heck, if I'm in North Carolina and a hurricane comes, I mean, that's not really, I mean, but is it a problem I can avoid? Well, maybe if I knew that the hurricane was coming and I could then escape it, I mean, I could leave, but I'm still dealing with challenges. But some of the challenges we have are human versus self. And, I think some of those are the more, a lot of character development and stuff happens when we're dealing with internal conflicts. And sometimes we've met the enemy's us, right? And so, again, it's kind of these kind of absolute broad statements that I think can maybe limit a little bit of what we could be taken away. So, some final thoughts is as you read, and again, Lisa Cron goes into all sorts of very interesting stuff and different processes you can use. I have taught, I said at the collegiate level and even graduate level courses on creative writing. There's no one way to write a book. There just isn't. Okay, there are lots of different processes you can use that really is going to work for you as an individual. So I would say, read this book. Uh, find the information that you find valuable. You know, don't take everything at face value. And feel free to disagree with it because there's sometimes that's true of really anything. It's like this is the one way you have to do this. Well, is it really? Maybe there's a better way. So that's my insight on Story Genius. And again, the opinions expressed in this video are completely my own. All right, thanks.